You are in the Google for Real Estate house. Click the house above to join if you haven't already. If you are on Clubhouse, if you're listening later on Spotify or iTunes or something, obviously you can't do that. Join us live on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. on the Clubhouse app, possibly on Chatter later. I'm Derek Bixler, born and raised in South Central Pennsylvania, single dad of three, commercial and residential real estate agent of 17 years at this point, outdoor adventure sportsman, and Google marketing geek. In this room, we talk about how to dominate Google local search and get business from our Google business profiles specifically. And we talk about some other things like today, I'll take some AMA. I've got some news and tips about Google stuff. And then I'm going to go into something people have been asking about, and I've said multiple times I was going to do and haven't done. So I'm going to do it today, but how to use Google Sheets to analyze investment and commercial properties. So obviously that is not Google business profile related, but does have to do with Google. Replays are available on Clubhouse for 7 days, and then after that, they're on my website via the link in the chat. I think the first link I put in there is a page on my website where you can access all the replays. As of now, they might be gated at some point, but right now they're all free reign. It is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts now, so it is out there as like an actual podcast. So if you like to listen to stuff on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I just did Apple yesterday and it worked for me and should be there. So those links are also in the chat if you'd like to catch it there. And free discovery call if you need help with something after I talk about something and you're like, hey, I need some help with that. Feel free to click up that free link, free call link in the chat as well. Today, like I said, we got some news to talk about. I'll take some AMA, some Ask Me Anything if anybody has any issues or questions about anything. I have that standby if we don't fill up the time with questions or anything. I'll have a Google Meet, but I will do it audibly also. So for people just listening, you can get something out of it as well. But how to analyze investment and commercial real estate. And I will also make available the template for the spreadsheet that I use to analyze commercial properties. So everybody will have access to that as well. Review exchange, as usual. If you want to put your review link in the comments, feel free to do that. That is allowed and encouraged. We like to give each other reviews. Um, what else? Next week, not sure yet. At some point, I'm going to have probably Favor, the guy that was in here before talking about SEO stuff, him or maybe somebody else, but probably him. I'm going to have them audit my website, my personal, probably my real estate one. Yeah, because that's the one I pay attention to more. So it would make more sense there. Audit my real estate website for SEO, which is kind of scary because I'm not a website builder per se. I know enough to be dangerous. I don't build websites for money. I have subcontractors for that. So that'll be interesting, but I am willing to open myself up to some criticism there and hopefully some improvements and hopefully some things that I'm doing right possibly too. I know there are some things that I'm doing right, but probably do that at some point. I don't know if that'll be next week or not. And I think that's it. I guess I'll plot my review link in the chat too for real estate. I'm at 83, going for 100. If you want to hit me up with one, feel free, no pressure. If you shoot me a screenshot of it, I will definitely reciprocate. If I manage your profile, I cannot reciprocate because it won't work. And even if we remove me, usually it will not work soon after. So if we like remove me and then I leave you a review, a lot of times that does not work either. So unfortunately, if I work with you, I might not be able to give you a review, but feel free to give me a review anyway if you would like. So I think that's all the announcements and everything. We'll get into first the news. The chat and messaging feature on the Google Business Profiles and the call tracking feature are both officially gone now as of July 31st. They were removed. So if you go in your dashboard now, you will see two less buttons in there, the calls button and the messaging button. Good riddance. Glad they're gone. They both sucked anyway. Didn't really use them. Just an extra messaging was always just kind of an extra thing to set up for no reason. But they are gone, so you will see two less buttons in your dashboard there. I heard on a podcast well, partially because they just, in their data, they see that nobody uses it or the feature just people don't like it or whatever. But I also heard that it was because of layoffs in a lot of companies, and Microsoft, blah, 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 tech companies have been laying people off. And I heard in one podcast that it's possibly because they were doing some layoffs. And if they're doing layoffs in a department, they're going to pick the thing that people don't like the most, that doesn't work the best, blah, blah, blah. So that might be possibly the reason for it. But regardless of the reason, I'm glad that those two things are gone. Service areas. I heard on a podcast somebody say that your service areas need to be within 2 hours of your Google business profile location. So we already knew, obviously, that you only rank in proximity to yourself. But from what this person said, it sounded like if you expand it too much, like your whole state, like if you're in the bottom of your state and you say your service area is the whole state, um, and so if somebody at the top searches, maybe I would get them, or I serve the whole state or whatever. But from what she said, it seemed like that could hurt you. So for instance, like with Search Bomb, with that Google business profile, I had it set to just the United States and Canada or whatever I had it set to, because that's who I'll serve and that's my service area, really the planet. But I think I had it to US or US and Canada or whatever. But from what she said, that's bad. It's not going to work, and it'll mess up anything that could happen locally. So I then switched it to just like Carlisle, Cumberland County, like the counties right around me within 2 hours. So that was the tip I got out of it, was basically in your service areas, do not include areas that are more than 2 hours, is what she said. I didn't research it further, and I don't know if it's like a hard 2 hours or where you're checking how, probably per Google Maps, how far it is away. But roughly 2 hours away. Do not include service areas that far away on your Google business profile. Oh, I also heard that only Google can crawl Reddit. So I don't know if this already took place or it's just starting to take place. This doesn't really matter to many people in here, most people in here probably, but apparently Google and Reddit have some agreement in place that only Google can crawl Reddit's website. So if you went on Bing or I don't even know any other search engines, I guess you could log into like AOL and use their search engine in there, like my parents do. But any other search engine, you would not find any Reddit results on, is what I took from it or how I understood it. I think part of it, they also said that Google had to pay Reddit, or they went to Reddit to be able to have the access to crawl it. So I'm guessing maybe in that, like, all right, you want us to pay you to have access to crawl Reddit, then we want exclusive access to crawl Reddit, maybe is what happens. I don't, they didn't say that. I'm just guessing. But anyway, only Google can, or at least will be able to crawl Reddit. And with a new algorithm change for the search, for Google's search engine, forums have been placing higher in the search results. Reddit, and I can't think of any other forums. Um, I'm sure there's a million of them. But anyway, forums like Reddit have been placing really high in rankings when people ask a question, because Google likes real life answers, things that aren't blog posts or staged or ads or kind of more salesy things. They like uh, communities where people are just talking real. And if something gets a lot of attention, then they like to show that to people. So in recent changes, those kind of forums have been showing up higher in search results, especially when you're asking for an answer to a question rather than looking for business or something like that. And then the last piece of news. So a lot of times you have verification or suspension issues. You try to go through the normal help channels, and Google doesn't respond, or there's no specific ticket for the thing you need, or whatever the reason, you get nowhere with Google after multiple attempts, multiple help tickets, doing anything you can, you're just getting nowhere. So once you get to that point, there is a community that's at the same tab. If you went to the help kind of contact uh, web place, what is it? URL for the help, putting a help ticket in. There's two buttons. One says contact or help, or I forget what it says, and then the other button says community. So you click on community and you can post a question into the community. If your question in the community gets noticed by one of the product experts, they're called, then they might take it upon themselves to help you or take on your case, so to speak. And they have the power to kind of talk to an actual human at Google and escalate tickets and say, hey, this is why this isn't working, help this person and get it done. So I've never had one ever get noticed, never even gotten a response, because there's lots of questions in there and there's only 10 product experts or however many there are. Um, so I've never had any luck with it. Luckily, we have always figured out those other issues outside of the community. We ended up getting it with a help ticket or figuring it out, being persistent with Google, but never got any community help. And right now, I'm working on one where we have not been able to get anywhere with Google. It's been a long time. I've tried like everything I can think of, every which way. So then I finally posted in the community. I did one thing different in this post to the community that might have helped. So in order for the product experts to help you, they need a case number. So you need to have put a help ticket in and have a case number. They want that case number in like your query. Also, a link to your profile that should be structured a certain way, so that they can easily access your profile. So they want, and then also a rundown of that's that's complete but also succinct and not super long. If there are attachments, you can add attachments or whatever, but just a really complete uh, question in the community, which I always do. But this time I put the case number as the very first thing in in the question. So they didn't have to like click see more or take on my question or go by the title of my question and say I want to help this person. I put the case number right as the very first line. So if one of those product experts is scanning the community to see like which one do I want to help out, if he sees mine and automatically already right then without even clicking on it knows that this question is going to have their stuff together, I'm going to be able to help them. It's not going to be like pulling teeth to get what I want. This person obviously knows that we want the case number and they're somewhat savvy with the stuff. So it's way more likely that they will pick mine to click on, read, and possibly help. So I don't know if that's what did it this time, but this time we actually got a response. I've been going back and forth with the guy. He then talked to some other product experts about some naming issues. And then we're now at the point where I've collected attachments from the client, from the Google Business Profile owner, to then send to this person, to then escalate the ticket and get the profile verified and in good standing. So it's a big hurrah for me, a great case study. I hear people talking about the help community all the time, and I've never had any luck. I try it. I still kept trying it because people say it works, and I just was about to give up on ever doing it again. And this gives me confidence that possibly it does work, or it does work, not possibly. And a way to structure it, hopefully, that might work in the future. Put that case number first, maybe even put the link to the profile right after that one, and then go into what you're talking about. But the case number up top, I think that's very attention grabbing and could help. Maybe even in the title of the question, put at the end like case number included or something. I don't know, but and right now I am, like I said, I'm at the point where I need to provide attachments to this person. However, all these back and forths are public in the community for everybody to see, and I think attachments are too. So I just got a reply last night I didn't read yet, but I asked the guy, are these public? Because like they're asking for sensitive documents with EINs and maybe not super sensitive information, but still stuff, if it could not be public, would be great to not be public. So I would need to just figure that out. But then once I get that guy the attachments, he can then escalate it and hopefully put a pin in it for us, and that client can start getting reviews and doing all the things that they need to be doing because they're on it and they were crushing it. And then we needed change brokerages, change the address, and we got stuck in this limbo place that we can't do anything. So that was awesome. First time getting help in the community actually does work. Tips. Random tip about Google. Somebody asked me about sharing a calendar event via a link. So if you made like a sales meeting, well, this was the case. It was a broker or yeah, it was a broker owner. They were having a sales meeting, and they wanted to send a link out for the calendar, the Google Calendar event to everybody. But she uses a Workspace branded email account. So her extension is not at gmail.com, it's at abcrealty.com. When you do that, it then restricts what you can share with people that don't have that, that are outside of the organization, that don't have that email uh, ending. So what you have to do, or what I figured out in trying to figure it out for this person, was I tried with my Workspace. I figured out that you can manually add people. Like I could take the email addresses and dump them in there, and then when you do that, it asks, do you want to share this with people outside the organization? And you can say yes, and then save, and then it will send an email and allow all those email addresses and people. But there was no way that I could figure out to find just a link to then send out to the world, whoever or whatever. So the only way I figured out how to do that was with the Gmail, my regular Gmail calendar. When I created a calendar event for with my regular Gmail account, it then had a big giant blue button that was missing when I did it the other way. That is just said event link or something like that, invite link or something to that effect, and it just generated a link. And I'm pretty sure, definitely Gmails, all Gmails could use it, but I'm guessing any email extension could use it. So that's just a little tip there about calendar event sharing. And then my second tip, I keep getting bad headshots sent to me. And I don't think there's anybody in this room, but sometimes I always have to push harder for a different headshot or like get a new headshot or whatever, and people discount the importance of a headshot. So I just want to reiterate the importance of a headshot. It's the first thing that people see. They totally judge you on it. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere internally, they're, especially in local services ads, it's just a bunch of faces in those results, and they're scanning which face do I like the best, or which face subconsciously resonates with me. I tend to resonate with Aunt Betty types. So as soon as I see an Aunt Betty and the stars are enough, I'm going to call that person. Okay, she didn't answer, scan again for another face I like. I'm convinced that especially in local services ads, it's the face. But even on the Google Business Profile pictures, any pictures of you, your main headshot, which should be your logo, your main headshot should be a really big, bright, smiling, energetic, looks fun to work with, showing teeth. Not big eyes, because when you truly smile, your eyes should squint. If you have big eyes when you smile, that looks like a fake smile and you look like a psychopath. So just smile for real. A good thing to do, actually, and I have started doing this for like family photos or stuff like that. We take a couple smile, funny face or whatever, and then I say, all right, for like 5 seconds, everybody just laugh hysterically like something awesome and funny happened, and like kind of look around at each other and just, and one of those, and then you're just like click 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 while you're doing that, and one of those is probably the money shot. So make sure your headshot is on point. Um, if you run local services ads in particular, and you look at your metrics, and it looks like I'm showing I got tons of impressions. My rate of being in the top 2 or 3, which it tells you in your dashboard, is high. So I know that I'm in that top 2 or 3 a lot, and people are seeing me, but nobody's calling me. Maybe you should check out your headshot and see if that's a high converting headshot or not. Do you have your lips pursed? Are you not showing your face straight? Well, in local services ads, they're pretty strict. If you're not straight on in certain criteria, it won't even let it through. But you could have a bad one that fits the criteria that they let through that just is not a good converting headshot. So make sure your headshot is on point. It's super important. And then make sure your headshot and profile pic is the same across the web everywhere, so everybody knows it's you very plainly. And my award for favorite headshot right now, and there's some other really good ones, but Julie Winter Paez And if you Google it, you can see it. It's her logo, and it might be her profile picture elsewhere. She's in northern Wisconsin, and I'm not looking at the screen. I don't know if Julie or if you're in here or not, but if you are, you have the best picture. If you see her, it's her kind of just laughing. Like I said, like somebody just said something really funny. Isabella Felix has a really good one with a big, just inviting, like I want to work with that person. Smile, Krista Lorenzo, all her pictures have big smiles, and she just looks energetic, and it looks genuine. Also, it doesn't look like me taking my high school picture as a junior. Some smile, like the smile was not an actual smile; it was what I thought a smile should be, or something, and you can tell that right away. So, really, a genuine, big, bright, straight facing, teeth showing smile, super important. So work on that headshot if you don't have a good one. And Julie gets the award for the best headshot right now. And that's it for my news and tips. So I'll open it up for some Ask Me Anything on Google Business Profile or local services ads or other marketing stuff if you have questions. And then if nobody has anything, I'll jump into the how to use the Google Sheets and how to analyze a commercial real estate or investment property. So, any questions, issues, or
Hey,
anything?
Derek, it's Marina from Dallas, Texas. I have a question. So, my brokerage gives me a website and I can put blogs on that website. Is there any way for me to either put a link or connect somehow to these blogs on my Google My Business, or is that something we shouldn't do?
You could essentially no. You could post them as updates, so you have some image for it, and just like a social media post, you have an image for it, and the link in the post sends them to the blog. You could do that. However, my mantra is we don't want to send people elsewhere, not to our YouTube channel, not to a blog, not down some other rabbit hole. They're there. They typed in buyer agent near me or a realtor near. They're there to call somebody right now. So we want to convince them to just call us right now. So you could put it there. I personally would not. I like to always have a call now button there, and I like to post testimonials there. But yeah, you could there, but I personally wouldn't. And then the other place potentially you could, if it's a good blog article that's really evergreen. Like I've got one, the lowest tax rates in Cumberland and Dauphin County, or Cumberland County, whatever I call it, and that every year I update that per the new millage rates. So that's a good resource for people. I have that in my products section under a category called resources and guides. So make a category in your products section called resources and guides, and you would create the category the first time you create a product. So you would add a product, and then in that product creation, you would pick the category, and if it doesn't exist already, you create a new one. And then in the future, you can just place any new ones, any more that you have in there. So if you have good evergreen ones, that would probably be where I would put them in the product section under a category called guides and resources. And they could just live there forever, and you could have the link there. No problem with having a link there. I usually have, if it's a home valuation product, I've got a link to a home valuation form or a Calendly link or something. And you can't have a call button on a product, so you have to have a link. So you could use the blog link there. And you still have the call button when people look at your products anyway, because there is a call button no matter what on products. So you kind of get two bangs for your buck there. So that's what I would probably not post them as updates, although you could, but definitely as a product, you could use them there. Did that
Okay.
help? Did that answer it?
Yeah, because I'm trying to drive. I don't necessarily want to drive traffic to that website, but the blog I get from um, a company every week, and they're good blogs. Um, but I'm just trying to up that game a little bit. And but you brought up a good scenario that I didn't think of is I do have like a couple of I have a buyer's guide and I have a relocation guide in my Google Docs. So I can put that link into products if somebody's looking for like a relocation guide.
Yeah,
Correct.
totally.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if so. Are the blogs on a website that's not yours even?
Yeah, it's with my brokerage. They give you a website, and I mean I have the blogs that I import like I copy and paste and put the pictures and stuff like that into my blog on my company website. But if I ever happen to leave that company, obviously I won't have I still will have the blogs, and I can put them where I want to. I'm just trying to expose myself a little bit more, I guess, and getting that information out. So I haven't quite, I share it with my database. I just haven't figured out a way to share it out, maybe on social media or something like that. I haven't figured that out yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, and optimally, if you could have the blog and put it on your own website that's got all the things on it and blah blah blah, and be driving traffic to your own website and all the words helping your SEO instead of somebody else, that would be optimal. Um,
Yeah, I'm
Otherwise, it's yeah. Go
thinking.
ahead.
Well, I'm thinking because I also have Follow Up Boss and Mailchimp as my distribution, and I think with Mailchimp, I've been able to send out emails, but I also know they like it if you have your own domain, I guess, or something like that, or own. Because right now I just have like Gmail, right? And I know they like it better when you have a not a Gmail account, and I just haven't. Again, I think Google has a business suite of some sort that will give me my own email. I just don't know if it has the domain of like a website or something like that, or do I have to do like a GoDaddy or something off of Google?
Yeah, you could just go to just Google Google Workspace. I think that's still what it's called, right? And as low as I think $6 is the first tier, I think, just to get a branded email address. That would be to a URL, and then if that URL is available, I'm guessing if the URL is not available, you wouldn't even be able to get an email address with it. So if it was available, you could then also get the actual URL for a website if you wanted to. But yeah, Google Workspace. There's other places you could get branded emails too. I'm guessing like Squarespace and other GoDaddies and Microsoft probably also you could get branded emails, but the go-to and obviously for me would be Google, and I think $6 is probably the cheapest. And then if you start paying more for the workspace, you get access to more features. You get longer Google Meet meetings and recording available, and more storage on Google Drive and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's how you would do that. And yes, on Mailchimp or any email autoresponder, which is what those are called. They do like it. I think you can technically use just a regular Gmail or something, but for vetting purposes on the other end of sending, for authentication, some kind of branded and official email is better for sure.
Yeah, I've
And
had
you
a
can
few
always go ahead.
bounce. Well, as I said, I have a few bounce back, and I think it's because it's my email is gmail.com, but I don't have too many that bounce back. I just have a few that bounce back, but I've looked into it. I might need to look into it again, and just get a more professional email tag, and possibly with everything happening, NAR and all that stuff, possibly building my own website so I can drive not just traffic, but agents that are asking questions to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Owning your website is always a good idea. Even if you start with just a homepage and then add from there, before you know it, 3 years from now, you have, oh, I got a website with some good blog articles on it and a good seller page and a good buyer page and blah, blah, blah. And every once in a while, it will get you business. Every once in a while, I get a call and they're like, we looked at your website and I love what you said about not doing dual agency and your stance on that. I've had a couple of attorneys say that, like probate attorneys say that they love that. Oh, I love that you don't do dual agency. I think that's great. Um, but yeah, your website can help you convert and get business out of the blue, possibly. Uh, just noticed, Lisa, you gave me a review. Thank you. I'll try to return the favor, and if you message me, I definitely will. But um, any follow-ups on that, or additional questions on that, or other questions? All right, cool. 24 minutes. I think I can do the spreadsheet. I have extra time. I could go longer if I need to, but The spreadsheet shouldn't take super long. I could do it fast or slow, I suppose. So we will jump over there. Again, I will also kind of speak everything audibly as I'm going through it. So if you're just listening on the podcast later or here in the room live, uh, should be able to follow along and get stuff out of it as I go through it. Yes, I did. Meet the Google Meet link at the top is correct now, so you might have to PTR. But if you want to join me on the video, again, the video will be recorded and available, posted in the Real Estate All Day, as well as going out on my email list. Blah blah blah. So there will be the video recording and the audio recording available. But I'm going to now jump over to my other computer where the Google Meet is going on. And we'll start on that, on how to use Google Sheets. That's how I see some people waiting. Get you in here. That's how I justified doing this in my Google room, is because it has to do with, oh, I forgot my phone. Has to do with Google with using the Sheets. Otherwise, wouldn't really have much place in this room, other than people were asking about it. So, hello, Cindy, Maria. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, good. Probably, I guess. Oh, I was muted. I was talking to you and I was muted. Can you hear me now? Sweet. My house is humid as hell because it cooled down last night to like 65. So like I'm gonna open the window, get some nice air in here, and then it poured rain and now it's moist as ish in here. So now I just closed all the windows like an hour ago and waiting for it to dry out. But I'm still happy for the cooler weather. I know it. I just sold a house to somebody from there. I think I told you a while ago. I had somebody. They settled, uh, going to the ballet school, so it's like a second house while they're here in the summers for ballet school. But they, yeah, yeah. I still didn't ask. I forgot to ask if they tried to go to the one there and couldn't get in or something, or if they're just doing both. Or I wanted to ask. Who was it? Oh, oh, sweet. Yeah, I should. Sorry, lots going on here. All right, Clubhouse people who can't hear Cindy talking. She was asking me, well, we were just bantering back and forth before I get started here. Again, the link at the top if you want to join us in the Google Meet, you can come in. I'm going to get started here as soon as I can find all my stuff. Gloria, come on in. Got a bunch of people. Sweet. All right, and again, the recording will be available later. And I've got one earphone computer, one earphone Clubhouse. So if you are on Clubhouse and you're trying to get into the Google Meet and I'm doing my thing and I'm not letting you in, just say something on Clubhouse. Say, hey, Derek, I'm trying to get in. Let me in or whatever. All right. So we are going to talk about how to analyze a commercial or investment property using Google Sheets. I just use a spreadsheet. There are softwares out there you can use. Argus is the most expensive, the big one that any More people coming in. Any people like true commercial real estate agents or REITs, real estate investment trusts, or any big commercial people would probably be using something like Argus or any number of other things out there to analyze properties. But I, over the years, have perfected APOD, annual property operating data, is what all those heady people would call it. I call it an income and expense analysis because that makes more sense to most of the people I'm talking to. Sometimes I forget what APOD is, blah, 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 what the acronym stands for. So I usually just call it an income and expense analysis. But you might hear APOD thrown out there by true commercial people. And again, there is software you could use to do this, but I like this. I've been in the business 17 years. My first 6 years was all commercial, doing big giant deals, working with REITs, a bulk of it office leasing, like big giant, like hundreds of thousands of square feet, down to single offices, blah blah blah. But lots of that, lots of retail, lots of like bigger multifamily and portfolios and all kinds of stuff. So I've run a million billion income and expense analyses. The one I'm going to use as an example, I just did, I don't know, 2 weeks ago for a buyer who is looking to start investing in smaller. This was a 2 unit. So the one I'm using is a 2 unit, but you can use this for anything as big or as small as you need to, any type of property, warehouse, office, investment. And really, you could use this sheet. I have analyzed businesses for sale. I used to be part owner of a climbing gym. At some point, they offered for me to actually buy the whole thing. So I analyzed it. I've also done some other business plans and analyzed things and done some other things. So you could actually use this sheet to analyze a business too, because essentially that's all this is just income and expense analysis. You're analyzing an investment or a commercial property as a business. You're buying a business. It's not, it is real estate, but the way you're analyzing it is like a business. I'm not, when I'm analyzing a commercial property or an investment, you can use comps or replacement value and all that kind of stuff. But for me, the numbers are what we're going to price it on. The numbers are what really matters. The cash flow, the return on investment, all that stuff. The numbers is what creates the value. Or the potential numbers could create the value. You might have a dumpy property and you're marketing it as the potential that could be there. So that's what we're looking at, and that's why we need to run these numbers on commercial properties because it's not the same as a house or a condo or whatever. You're not just going and finding comps and basing it on the comps. There's a lot of variables that you need to account for, and a lot of times the numbers don't shake out a lot, especially for me. Like if I'm representing a buyer, they usually love me because my numbers are really true. I'm putting all the possible numbers that could be in there that will go over that a lot of people leave out. A lot of the numbers that an appraiser later will put in there, if you leave it out, just because you left it out in your analysis, it's not going to put it in there. So you need to have all in there. And when you do actually analyze it nitpicky, almost always it's not. Well, I'm always like, that's not worth what they're asking. If you want some cash flow, it's definitely not worth. Sometimes it's okay just to break even and no cash flow, but my analyses are pretty harsh, and then I usually back it out. Okay, which I'll go through as I go through this. Okay, well, it doesn't make any sense at that number, but maybe if okay, we're self-managing, so we don't have to pay a management company. So I can take that number out, which raises the value. Okay, I'm gonna rent it myself. I'm not gonna use a real estate agent and pay commissions. So okay, that number comes out, which raises the value, which I'll kind of show you how you can fudge the numbers and try to figure out different values for properties. And a lot of it will be subjective later when you're going through things, and you can always change this form if you want to. But we want to account for all the different possibilities. A lot of times, and with this particular one, I actually did an analysis with those commissions and legal fees and all those things that people leave out and say, well, I'm going to do it. It's free or whatever. I'm putting it all in there. Kind of worst case scenario one, everything that could possibly go into this as an expense. And then one where it's the, the better side. Taking, okay, I am going to self manage. I am going to rent it myself and not pay a commission. Okay, I don't think I'm going to have to replace one appliance every year. So I'm not going to account for that and those kind of things. So you can finagle these numbers different ways to make them show different values, as you'll see as we go in here. So I'll just start going through the sheet, and if anybody has any questions as I go, please feel free to interject. I'm just going to check, make sure nobody's waiting to get in. Nope. And I'm about to burp, so I'm going to mute. I chugged some. I didn't mute myself on Clubhouse, only on the video. Excuse me, Clubhouse people. Uh, yeah, I chugged some coffee, not coffee, tea. I quit coffee um, right before we started. So, okay, this sheet, you're looking at it here. Like I said, this is for, I have the house somewhere. This is for a 2 unit. It was a house that was converted into an upper and a lower. It actually has two different numbers as far as mail goes. It's 36 to 38, blah, blah, blah. So this was the property that I was analyzing for this person. So the sheet that we're going to look at is based on this. He did not end up making an offer. I don't, even in my potential like better numbers, I don't see it being worth what they're asking. It is pending now, so I'm interested to see what they sold it for. If you went by the 1% rule, this would work. You always hear that 1% rule. I want 2%. You need more than 2%. Like I said, a lot of times people are, it's 1%, 1%. When you actually analyze it with actual numbers and do it the real way, that a lot of times doesn't shake out. And obviously, your cash flow and all that depends on how much money you're putting down, which then dictates your payment and dictates how much cash you'll have left over and all those kinds of things. So amount down and interest rate and all those things are going to matter also. But the 1% rule, in my experience, rarely works. When you really analyze it truly the way it should be, nitpicked apart, it a lot of times doesn't work. This one would have, the total rent was more than 1% of that, but when I analyze it, it's not even close to what they were asking. So when I come into this sheet, and I'm just going to go kind of go top to bottom and go through all the things here that are in this. And again, this sheet will be available to everybody. The template I'll make available. Again, I call it an income and expense analysis. You'll hear it called an APOD a lot of times out there in the industry. You see the key up here, the little yellow thing equals, that means that is a computated formula. There's a formulated in those yellows. So you'll put in the other information that is not yellow, and then those will be computed for you. So anything in yellow is computed for you. And then the reds are ones that must be entered. All the other blanks that we'll go through still need to be entered, like electric here you can see is blank, but I don't have a red in it. That's just because it's tenant paid in this choice in this case, but I don't have to have a number in there, so it's not red. So the red ones must be filled in order for this to work and to compute everything. I don't know why I keep saying a word that doesn't exist. To compute um, everything correctly. So your key up there, yellows will be computed for you. Red, you have to fill in order for this sheet to work. Over on the side, purchaser asking price, that is going to come from a bottom number, which we'll get to. It gets pulled from down here, purchase price, after we compute it. So it might be, if I'm doing it for a buyer, that would be a purchase price or offer price, obviously, that I'm trying to come up with. Or if I'm analyzing it to list it, that would be the asking price or a range that I would be around. The total cash needed, I always put up here at the top. That's not needed all that much. And I believe that takes the down payment, which is based on whatever percentage of the purchase price you put in there. And then I guess, I forget how I added some amount to that, which I forget, but I won't spend time right now figuring out what I added there, because obviously that's more than the down payment. I probably added 1% for Pennsylvania transfer tax for us here. See somebody, hello, Ladora. Oh, what's up? Question, Ladora? I will after this. I did not make it available yet. I could put it in the chat, I suppose. Hold on one second. Share with others. Anyone? Copy link. All right. Wait. Nope. Chat, not that. Except if you go in here, you're going to be in my live one probably. So I might have to, yeah, make a template. After this, I'll come up with how to share the template the best way. I think you can share a template without giving access to it. Um, but yeah, I'll make that available for everybody for sure. All right, so you got your asking price that's derived from down below and from all these numbers, and then your total cash needed, which will vary. Obviously, like I said, I think I put a 1% in there for transfer tax and then a little bit more. I don't know if that computes, but you might have to change that equation there. Then all the main property information I'd like to have here at the top. I got the address, the city, the municipality, which sometimes differs from the city here in Pennsylvania, the county. We want to know what all those things are. The assessment and the taxes. So I don't just go by the taxes on Zillow or RPR or on the multi-list or whatever. I go get the assessment. I input the land. Here they split it up into land and building. I put those individual things in there. The total is computed for me. And then I put in that current millage rate for that year for that municipality in there. And then my total taxes down below in my expenses are derived from that. So for taxes, I don't rely on anything else unless it's a tax picture of an actual tax bill, which is probably going to be face value exactly what I'm getting here, maybe less on the discount period, maybe more on the penalty period. But I do my taxes myself right there. Zoning, that's important with commercial properties for sure, especially if you're talking about a retail or office or warehouse or flex space or anything where there's going to be lots of different uses. It could be a window tinting company, it could be a storage company, it could be a paint and create company. All these things could be in one space. So you need to know what the zoning is, know what's allowed there, and what the best use for that property would be. So you definitely want to look up what it is. Again, don't rely on other things. Look up the zoning, have that zoning. I usually just save that section of it, the R2 medium density section of the zoning, and then I have it in my file to provide to the client, to provide with the listing, to educate myself on what we can have there. If somebody says, hey, we want to put a strip club there, uh, it could be a restaurant, it could be a venue, a perfect place for a strip club, and it's zoned commercial R commercial C3 or what the most unrestricted commercial there is, but still a strip club not allowed most places, or bars a lot of times, or any of those kinds of things. So you always want to know what the zoning is, what the allowed uses are, and all that kind of stuff, especially if it's not just a multifamily or some residential kind of thing. So the zoning I always put in there and look up myself. The type, so we got the zoning, and then I'm going to put what it actually is. This is a multifamily 2 unit. It could be retail, flex space. Flex being kind of the front is a retail space, and then the back is a warehouse or a workshop, kind of like a sign shop. A lot of times they've got the client facing part in the front, and then after about 1,000 feet there's another couple thousand feet in the back that's just kind of open warehouse and workshop or whatever. That would be flex space or retail or warehouse or whatever. The acreage I always put in there, and then the square feet, and the square feet you have to put in there for all these per square foot computations you see happening here to take place. So hopefully you can always, that should be something you can always get. Commercial, especially residential. Commercial, sometimes a little bit harder, but square feet you definitely have to put in here. Um, and then you'll get all these per square foot things. For residential, a lot of these per square foot computations don't matter. But if you start getting into office space, warehouse space, any other kind of commercial, especially office and warehouse, um, those things people are looking at the per square foot very closely. Because if I see that the electric, in the numbers that that office building owner gave me, the electric is $5 a square foot, something's wrong. It should actually, I don't know what it should be right now, but traditionally, when I did this a lot, an office building, you're looking at like $1 to $2 for electric would be normal. And if it was 250, $3 per square foot for electric, then what's going wrong? Or is this a call center with a million servers running and they need to start paying their own electric or something like that? Um, I want to know these per square foot things to know if things are correct, because a whole number doesn't mean anything to me. But if I know what per square foot basis should be, or around what they average, and I see something way out of whack, especially again for office, warehouse, any commercial stuff, it's all very square foot analyzing heavy. You want to know what all those per square foot numbers are. So all those are in here, and you have to put this square foot number up here in order for all these things to work. Notes, if you had any notes, like, I don't know, room for a cell tower, but one doesn't exist or something. You could put that there. Any kind of notes you want to. There's not a lot of room for it there. I don't have any for this one, but you could put some there. So up here at the top is just, somebody have a question or anything? No. If you do, just speak up because I'm not watching the hand raising things. So all the way up at the top here, you're just seeing all the basic information about the property. So you have it all in one nice place, and you're making sure you know the correct taxes and you've verified all these things yourself, the zoning, all that stuff. Then you come down to the income part. So we need to know how much income either is this property currently getting or could this property get. And you'll see that a lot with retail or office or any kinds of those properties. So it might be a completely vacant office building. So that's $0 rent. So right now it's worth nothing. There's no income and there's expenses. So it's worth $0. So how do I come up with a value of an empty office building? Well, you would go out and see what is the potential rent if it was rented. And you would do the same thing with a multifamily, or if a multifamily was rented and the rent is lower than current market rent. That would happen with office also. If you had somebody renting an office and they're at $12 a square foot, which is probably unheard of now, and current rents for a class A office space should be 25, $30 a square foot, and you're selling that building, I would be selling that building based on the potential rent, not on what the current rent is. Because the second this tenant leaves, you're going to up that rent, hopefully get a tenant, and boom, instantly that property is worth that much more. So that's why you would do possibly two or three different analyses to see kind of what it is currently sitting at, what the potential is at, what do I think it's worth? It also depends, am I representing this to be a listing and running numbers for that, or am I representing a buyer? If you're on the buyer end, you could still look at it with the potential, because you can't say to the seller, well, it's only worth this because you rented it. There's still 1 year left on a lease that's half of market. That seller would be crazy to sell it to you based on those numbers. So they have every right to ask you based on potential rent numbers. So as a buyer, makes sense that you would accept running numbers on potential rent, but you might take out of, okay, here's the price I came up with, and now I'm going to take out any monies from that price. It's $1 million property based on the numbers, the potential rent, and now I'm going to take off that $1 million, the vacancy while I'm renovating it, so I can ask that extra rent. So 3 months of vacancy, I'm going to take off that million. I'm also going to take off the cost of the renovations to get it where it needs to be. And now I'm going to offer you 800,000 instead of a million, and that's what it's worth. But if you went by current rent numbers, maybe it was only worth like 500,000 or whatever. So you can see where you can play with different numbers and make different numbers say different things. But essentially here, the next thing, you are figuring out how much income I either currently or can get from this property. In this case, I did what they are currently getting from it because these leases were fairly new, I think. I might be talking out of my butt there, but for whatever reason, I used current, or maybe I figured that the current rents are potential rents, same as the potential, so I just left it at what is currently in place. But anyway, the current potential income is up here at the top. Over here, total monthly rent, you can see it is computed for you. That comes from a separate tab called the rent roll. A rent roll is something you should be giving every single commercial, multifamily office, whatever client should be filling one of these out. Even if there's only one unit, I want this filled out. But definitely if there's multiple units. And it gives you all the information that you need to analyze the property. If I don't know who the tenants are, well, I don't need to know who the tenants are, but what the tenants are, how many bedrooms or how many square feet, if it's office, every unit is, what utilities are paid by tenant, what utilities are paid by landlord, is it currently leased, what the rent is, when does it begin, what's the expiration date, is there a security deposit held? Um, because if there is a security deposit held, it needs to be transferred over with the transfer of the property. And hopefully they are getting security deposits. If you see that there are no security deposits, that's probably a management problem. But you want to know what those security deposits are. Have a notes section so you can write any different notes you need to. For example, in this case, all they had in the associated documents on the multi list, and I asked the agent and he didn't send me anything else, so all we had to go on was a renewal addendum, not the actual lease. So just like a 1 or 2 page renewal addendum that they gave for the one unit, but not the actual lease. So I put that in the notes. You can see I didn't know what the security deposit was because of that. I didn't know what the utilities paid by landlord were. I'm guessing similar to the other unit, but those kind of things I kind of had to assume. The leases also did not have the square footage in there, so I left them as question marks when I sent it to this client, but for purposes here, because I wanted to have the square feet on the other sheet, I put the square feet in here. I just split it exactly in half because it is about a halfway house. Um, so a rent roll is always something you need to get filled out. You might have more columns you come up with that like, I want to know this every time too, or one that I think all of these are pretty necessary. The number of bedrooms, obviously, if it's an office building, that won't matter. But I think most all these will apply. And then you can also add here at the bottom any additional income, which would be things like laundry or vending. Um, I almost put cell tower down here, but if you had a cell tower, say, on the top of an office building, and they were paying that person rent for that, I was going to put that down here as additional income. But really, I want that up here under the actual rent roll because if there's, especially cell towers, that's an official thing that they have leased that 12 square feet or whatever to them, and they've got their fence around their thing that goes up into the air, and they're paying, and a lot of times those are great. If you got a commercial property and you could put one on there and you have a contact in the cell phone industry, great income. They're usually, at least the last ones I did, which was probably a good 7 years ago, so probably more now, but it was 2 grand a month for them to put up the cell tower. And it was a company that puts up cell towers and then they lease it, they sublease the cell tower to all the companies. So the companies don't actually usually put up these cell towers a lot of times. It's another company and then they lease them to all the companies. But it was 2 grand a month just to plop to give them like a 15 by 15 section of the parking lot of this garage to put up a cell tower. So cell towers can be great, but the point is that would be an actual lease that is in place like anything else. So that would go on the rent roll as well, as would storage units. If you've got garages and I put chicken wire up and now it's 2 storage units, that should be, even if it's month to month, there should be an actual lease in place, and that would be something that would go on the rent roll. So any of this additional income should really just be laundry, vending. I can't even think of anything else, but like coin operated or random stuff, possibly in a office building or a warehouse, or especially in an office building, like a giant office building where there are multiple tenants and the first floor has vending machines and a cafeteria and all these amenities that also generate income for the owner. That kind of stuff could go down here as well. So anything that does not have a lease in place would go under additional income. And then up under the rent roll, everything would go in there. Any questions on the rent roll at all, or the income deriving section? So then these numbers here that will be computed for you, if I could scroll over, anyhow, the total monthly income will be carried over automatically to the total monthly income right here that you see in this main sheet. And then the total potential annual income, because this sheet is all based on annual numbers, not monthly, annual. That's why the APOD is called an annual property operating expense sheet, not a monthly. So this is all annual. I don't think I really said that, but yearly figures is what you need here. So we figured out what the total monthly rent is, and then that's going to compute for you times 12, gives you your potential yearly rent. So this is the gross amount of rent I could possibly get with this property. And then the next line, you have to take out, and this is one of the numbers that most people will leave out or not account for, but an appraiser a lot of times will, with little multifamily, maybe not, but definitely with bigger properties, bigger commercial properties, they're typically going to put in a vacancy and credit loss amount in here. Basically, you're saying this, it's impossible to be 100% leased every time. You're going to have maybe one tenant a year turnover, and if I'm supposed to paint the whole unit and clean it and get it, says I have to get it ready, that could take up to a month, and then source a new tenant, get them in there, blah blah blah. You're looking at a month without rent at least or whatever. So with multifamily and the vacant vacancy and credit losses percentage can vary. You could see as high as 10, 15% possibly. It depends what the property type is. With multifamily, I usually go with 1 month. So actually, there's 2 units here, so it'll be 2 months without rent, one for each unit, I'm going to assume. Again, I'm on the conservative side here. Maybe it's a 3 year lease, or maybe they're good tenants and we don't think they're going to leave. But you never know. I'm doing this worst case scenario. Every expense that could possibly come up, hopefully, I want to account for. So my vacancy and credit losses for a smaller multifamily is 8%, which is roughly 1 month of it. So you put your 8% in there, it will compute what you're losing, and then your gross operating income is what we're going to take and deduct the expenses from to derive a net operating income, which I'll talk about, and then derive a value of the property from that. And I see we're at 10:07. I'm just going to keep going. That's fine. People can drop if you want. Recording will be available later, like I said. So now I have my gross operating income. And again, it tells you your per square foot basis. And if you knew your averages for that property type in your market or whatever, that would maybe mean something to you. Probably won't, but still good to have in there. Um, so gross operating income, we got the biggest figure we're going to be left with every year, 20 grand and some change. So now we need to go dive into the expenses. So out of that income that I'm getting, that 20 grandish, we're going to have to pay all these things, or possibly not. We need to at least look at all of them and see if I'm paying for them, to then deduct from that top number to get myself a net operating income. And from the net operating income, the NOI, which you'll hear people call it, the NOI is the net operating income. That is where you derive a value from. Similar to EBITDA, or like when you're evaluating a business, your EBITDA is what you derive typically. Sometimes people will use the gross income of a business, but if I'm doing it, and most times I think, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but the EBITDA is what you're gonna, because that takes out certain expenses and blah blah blah. It's more of kind of a profit. How much profit am I getting? And then I'm deriving my multiples. How much are these types of businesses? What multiple of that number am I buying it for? So the EBITDA, or the net income, is what I want to derive what that thing is worth from, not a gross number. That's why the 1% doesn't work. The 1% would be based, that 1% rule that people say would be based on a gross number without taking into account any of this stuff, really. So you definitely want to run your own numbers, and then you get that net operating income, which will take you to a value. So taxes and insurance is the top first thing you see up here. Can't get away from those. Those should always be numbers in there. Some won't apply, so you'll leave them blank in here. But real estate taxes and insurance should definitely be in here. You can see to the side under comments, I put comments here, like for real estate taxes, I write in there per assessment times millage rate, and that is computed for you from above where I put all the tax information in. Under property insurance, under the comments, I have estimated, because I didn't have those numbers the from the owner, but I can't run numbers without putting something in there, because obviously that's going to be an expense. So I put 1.5%, 2,500 bucks ish. Could be more, could be less. I don't know. I didn't talk to an insurance agent, but to get it done quickly, I had to put something in there, and I think that's probably about reasonable. I might have even Googled what's the average property insurance or whatever, but you put your percentage in there. Or if you had the actual figure, or you talk to an insurance agent, you could just put the actual figure there and get rid of the computation if you wanted to. So it might be estimated, might be actual, whatever you want to do for the comment next to that. So we got our real estate taxes and our insurance, which must be there every single time. Well, unless those things are paid by the tenant. So I'll take that back. Won't be if you had a, say, a McDonald's or even a house, maybe a single family house that you're renting to somebody. That could be what they call a triple net lease. And a triple net lease is where the tenant is paying everything. They're doing the lawn, the snow. Think of like a McDonald's, a corner with a McDonald's. That is a great investment because that corner is going to grow in value, number one, and McDonald's is going to do everything. They're going to pay to build the building. They're going to pay to put in the traffic light that the township wants. They're going to pay to do all the improvements, to get the clear cuts. Somebody's coming in here. Um, they're going to pay to do everything. They're going to pay the actual taxes. It will just be passed through directly to them. They're going to pay the insurance. They're going to pay typically anything. So if it's a triple net lease, you might actually not have real estate taxes and insurance, but most times, especially for these smaller multi-units, the tenants are probably not going to be paying these things. So you're going to be putting them in here. If you have a office building or retail space or anything where there's multiple tenants paying for the real estate taxes, like you're making them pay their prorated share, that might change this number as well. So you need to look into all those things. Am I being reimbursed for it? So I'm actually, this number should be zero, or I'm actually paying for it, or I'm actually paying a portion of it, or whatever. So I will take that back. Real estate taxes and property insurance will not always be in here, but probably usually most times it would be. And if it was zero, I want to say over here under the comments that paid by tenant, like down here, you see tenant paid, NA, yada, yada. So we got our taxes, our insurance, and then professional fees, things like management fees, property management, accounting and legal, you are paying your accountant every year, and if it costs, my accountant is, I think this year it was 700, seems to go up like $50 every year, might be more, might be less, so let's say 1,000 for an easy number. And 10%, probably not that much, but 10% of that $1,000 time is spent on the accountant doing stuff for this property when he does your taxes. So you would want to put in $100 in here for accounting, even though most people would say, well, I'm not doing that, I'm doing things myself, blah blah blah. But you are paying, and even if you are doing it yourself, your time is worth money, and you want to analyze things as if you are a professional property owner who does things as a business and pays other people to do things, and I'm not doing it myself. That's how I'd like to look at things, and then back out of those things later if I need to, or say, okay, I accept not putting that number in here or whatever. But management, property management, accounting and legal, commissions. If you anticipate hiring a real estate agent to rent it for you or something, you can see I put a crazy number in here. That is crazy because I didn't want to put something more. Well, there is no standard, so whatever. I put a crazy number in there that obviously isn't real. And then advertising, those would be all the professional fees: management, accounting and legal, commissions, advertising. And if you came up with something else that I forgot, you can put it in there or just include it in one of these totals. For management, I did 10% for this one. I know you could get decent management around here for about 10% for this type of property. So that number is put in here. Accounting and legal, you see I put $500 in here. Maybe a little bit less is reasonable. I'm not going to spend that much. Or my accounting every year, like I said, it's only $100 towards this, so that could be different. But I'm just going to leave it at 500 here. And again, I like to be conservative and then back out of numbers and say, okay, maybe that was too harsh. So 500 for that. And again, estimated in the comments. Always put in a comment over here, especially for when you send this to the client. You want them to know what these numbers are. Is that an actual number? Is that estimated? Where did that come from? That kind of thing. Commissions, I acted like I own tons of properties. I don't do a darn thing. I'm a hands-off owner. What is this worth to a completely hands-off owner, not a self-manager? So I'm going to be hiring a real estate agent or the management company will be doing it. So there will be commissions. So I'm going to take commissions out of here as an expense. For office or any bigger commercial kind of thing on there, you're definitely taking out commissions, because especially if it's a $100,000 multi-story, multi-tenanted office building, most likely, unless you're a big owner that has a handle on it, you're going to be hiring a real estate agent to lease that out for you. So you really do need to put a commission in there. So I did here, but that's something that could possibly come out, especially with a property like this that's a 2 unit, and reasonable to assume maybe he would do it himself or whatever. Same with the management. But all those fees, again, I like to put them in there if at all possible to at least see the worst case scenario. Then we come to utilities: electric, gas, oil, water, sewer, trash, other. If there's something else I forgot or whatever, you could add it there. Or if there's something unique about that property, you could put it in there. Some won't apply, so you can just leave them blank. If it's tenant paid, over in the comments, I put tenant paid. If it's not tenant paid, I need to guesstimate. Like if it was an office building, and I know office buildings right now typically run about $3 a square foot for electric, I would put in here $3 per square foot for electric and put estimated over in the comments. So I would put something in there. In this case, I know the electric is paid by the tenant. I know the water is paid by the tenant. I know the trash is paid by tenant. Actually, I also know the sewer is paid by the tenant. Those two up, gas and oil. There is no gas or oil, so those are NA. Other, there are no others. I guess to be anal, I could put the NA in there as well. Then it comes down to the building upkeep. So the building upkeep includes things like licenses and permits, supplies, which could be things like paper towels for the restrooms if it's an office building, or maybe if you have laundry units in the basement of a multi-unit and you keep a slop sink and you keep paper towels there and maybe a couple other things, you need to account for that. That is an expense. You can't say I'm not spending money on that. So I always put $100 or a couple $100 in for supplies. um, but you got licenses, permits, supplies, pest control, janitorial, elevator, repairs and maintenance, reserves for replacements, and I'll go over a couple of these things as we go here, and lawn and snow. So building upkeep has a bunch more things. Licenses and permits, I estimate you're going to have to, especially with a commercial property or even with residential properties these days, a lot of our municipalities have a yearly check that you have to do. By the way, that is one thing RPAC and my local association fights super hard, does very well at fighting the non-landlord friendly things that our municipalities try to do to us and counties, and they stop a lot. But anyway, a lot of them do have some kind of inspection, something happening. Definitely with commercial and office use, you have to apply to the township to say, is this strip club allowed to do business here? And if the zoning says they are, and they check the space and everything's to code, blah blah blah, yes, we'll issue that permit. And that permit and those licenses and all that stuff costs money. And sometimes you're passing it through to the client or to the tenant, and making them pay for it. But this is a 2 unit. This is probably going to be self-managed or even managed by somebody else. There's going to be some kind of, I know that this municipality does do an inspection. I didn't check to see what it is, but most of them are between 100 and maybe as low as, I think one's like 45 or something, but they go as high as a couple $100. So I put 150 in for licenses and permits. Again, commenting that it's estimated. Supplies, no idea. I know this unit didn't have any kind of common area stuff. There were some steps, maybe. Basement is common area. So there might be a couple cleaning supplies, maybe a broom that's kept over there, maybe a mop, or I don't know, kind of random things. So again, supplies, maybe nothing. And that could be maybe a number you could take out to make a value look better, along with some other numbers that we'll go over that you could change around. But supplies, I'm going to put something in there for supplies. Pest control, I didn't put anything in here. Oh, because it's tenant paid. If it wasn't tenant paid, again, reasonable. Really old house like this, you can be subjective. What is this? If it's a brand new office building, maybe no pest control needed. If it's old 1859 unit house that was split into two like this, probably some kind of pest remediation needed. Ant traps needed down somewhere all the time. Mouse traps always in the basement, whatever. Probably put something in for that, but tenant was paid on this one. Janitorial in an office building, tenants typically in the suite would pay for their own janitorial. The owner would pay for the common areas, the bathrooms, the hallways, the elevators, all that kind of stuff. Or tenants might even pay their prorated share of the common area janitorial or whatever. So, especially with office spaces, the janitorial can vary. With a multifamily residential, that's always on the tenant usually, unless there's some kind of, if it's a big high rise with common area, then there would be janitorial, I suppose, for the common area there. But with something like this, the tenant's paying that. Elevator, NA with this, obviously. And elevator, that could be your inspections every year. A lot of times, a yearly inspection or however often they do them is required. That cost of doing that. Maybe it's a really old elevator. You need to put some in here for repairing it every year because you know it needs fixed or something. So, some kind of elevator maintenance number in there. Repairs and maintenance, that's again kind of subject to, is it really old property, is it really new? In this property there, it's an old house, it's old units, all the appliances are not new, maybe not on their last leg, some of them kind of were. So with something like this, a 2 unit, I'm just kind of assume that I probably need to replace maybe one appliance every year. That's probably reasonable, but maybe more, maybe less. But especially after a few years, even if it was two a year, after a few years, they've all been replaced and are good, and I'm paying nothing now. So one a year seems reasonable for this. If there were more 100 units, obviously that number should be bigger. But a 2 unit, I'm going to say one appliance a year is probably reasonable. And I put a $500 value on it. I can probably get a oven, a typical flat top oven that suffices for a rental unit for $500 still. You could put more, less or more, but that's kind of a subjective thing. And then I put estimated over to the side. Reserves for replacements is the next item. This is another number. Well, a lot of these numbers people leave out: the supplies, the pest control, the licenses and permits, blah, blah, blah. But reserves for replacements almost always left out. And again, appraisers a lot of times will put it in there, maybe not. But essentially, you want to put a number in here of how much money am I taking from my gross operating income to put aside to save for a new roof when it comes time, to save for a new elevator or new flooring in the common areas or whatever. So every year you should be accounting for, and again, this could be a number that you maybe take out. Okay, I accept I'm not going to do any of that. Or maybe that number is wrapped up in the repairs and maintenance number that I already put in there or whatever. But if you're being really anal and doing conservative and every number that should possibly be in here, if you're like a professional property analyzer, then I would put reserves and replacements, and typically a couple percent is fair, maybe more. If it's a really old property that everything is about to go, maybe less. If it's brand new and not that much needed, but 2% typically about, which also gets you basically another appliance there with $400. But 2% for my reserves and replacements. And then lawn and snow, if you have an actual number from the person, you could get it, or you could put it in here. Here, it's the tenant's responsibility to do all of that. A lot of times people will say, well, I don't do that. But you do. Do you go over there and shovel it yourself for the tenants when the snow happens? If so, then you're responsible for the lawn and snow, and maybe you should put a number in here for your own time, or as if I was paying somebody else to do it and I'm a hands-off, really savvy owner or whatever. So lawn and snow may or may not be in there. In this case, tenant responsibility. Reserves for replacements, I guess that's estimated. And then the total expenses number will be derived for you, again, showing a per square foot value. Um, the per square foot value, again, is super important. If you're really savvy doing office space in your market, you're going to know that total expenses for an office space typically runs around this X dollars. And if you see it's way above or way below, then I need to ask some questions or figure out why. So you get your total expenses, and then your gross operating income minus your total expenses down here will derive your net operating income, your NOI, which you can see is really low. This property isn't worth nearly what they are asking for it when you do this analysis. I think it is worth more than I'm doing here. But in any case, this number, the NOI, is your gross operating income minus your total expenses, gives you your net operating income. Then from your well, let me stop there. Any questions or anything on that part? No questions on expenses. Cool. All right. So the next page, and if you printed this out, typically the page break will be right under my disclaimers. And you can dictate your own page breaks when you print stuff from Google also. But the next page, if you had page breaks in here, would be where we're coming up with an actual value or what we want to offer for the house or the property, what our debt service is going to cost us, how much cash flow we have after debt service, our percent, our return of investment, um, which does not include everything. If you're really hip to this commercial stuff and you're thinking about IRR and you've taken the CCIM classes and you're going that far with stuff, this does not go that far with it. These cash flow and return of investment are really just cash on cash based kind of on the numbers in this sheet, does not take into account opportunity cost and discounting percentages of future income and all those heady things that you would learn in CCIM. It's just kind of more cash on cash. However, the cash flow should be accurate, pretty accurate to what you should expect if you bought this house at the terms you have in here. And I'll go over this page here. And then all the way, the last page in here is just showing you your future value for reference. So if I bought it at X price above, after 1 year, this would be the value. After 2 years, this would be the value. After 3 years, this would be the value. And then to the right, it shows you how much appreciation you've made. So on this property in 5 years, if it was purchased per the terms above here, this person will have made 12 grand just off of appreciation. And then you would probably take that number into account if you were doing all the headier stuff that I was talking about and taking it further. But it at least gives you a quick reference of maybe like, okay, up here, this cash flow sucks. I'm basically breaking even, losing a little bit, but I'll call that break even. So that sucks, but some investors are fine with just breaking even these days when prices are crazy and everybody wants to buy stuff. So maybe I'm okay with breaking even. Um, and I'm still making 2,300 bucks a year roughly or whatever. So I'm breaking even, plus I'm getting some appreciation, plus all the tax benefits of depreciating the asset and expenses that I'm writing off and that kind of stuff. So you might be actually making more than the cash flow up here, but it's just down here kind of for reference to look at, and you could take it further and make a new computation out of it if you wanted to. So now I'll come back up to the second page, which has the estimated value range section. So first, I have to explain what a cap rate is. If you hear people talk about commercial real estate, prices are always derived from, and people will always ask, what is the cap rate? And a lot of times, LoopNet, CoStar, the commercial Crexy, the commercial real estate listing sites will ask you for a cap rate for the price, because that tells people right away kind of how it was derived. So cap rate, which is the capitalization rate, which is essentially how much profit, what percentage of the purchase price is the profit? Does that make sense? Did I state that the right way? How much return of the purchase price am I getting every year? So am I getting 6% return from the purchase price every year? Am I getting 7% return? Am I getting 8? Am I getting 9? How you know which cap rate to use to get a purchase price is your market. So you kind of, I basically just call a couple people and say, hey, what are multifamilies in this kind of setting selling for these days? I might call a commercial appraiser, a couple of commercial agents that I know do a ton of it or whatever, and say, hey, what are you seeing in the market? What's the cap rate? Or you might be able to see on LoopNet or other places as well what things are selling for. Because so in your city, maybe you figure out that, okay, 2-unit multifamilies that are kind of old in a rural setting, similar type thing, those things are selling at a, what did I use here, a 7 cap. Those are you selling at a 7 cap in my market. So I'm going to price this at a 7 cap. So you take, in order to get this purchase price you're seeing here, you take your net operating income divided by your cap rate, gives you the purchase price or the value or whatever you want to call it. And then you can see here in the spreadsheet, I automatically compute, I keep saying that damn word. I automatically compute cap rates 6 through 13. You might have lower. A lot of times, those McDonald's or those sure bets, the more sure the bet, the high credit tenant that's never going to leave. It's a 20-year lease. It's triple net. It's super premium investment. Those cap rates might be four, three, four, five lower. And then the more risky the investment gets, the higher the cap rate and the lower the price will be, if that makes sense. So, like in the deep in the hood, you might be able to get a 13 cap, which means you're making 13% on your money, so to speak, every year. But there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of turnover, there's a lot of pain in the ass. But I can only get a 4% cap rate for return on a McDonald's. But that I'm going to do no work, no management. The lease is super long. By the time the lease is over, it'll be paid off, and I could either just pocket everything or sell it for $2 million or whatever. So cap rates are going to matter. You need to know your market and ask people. If you don't know, check websites, whatever, research what things typically sell for in your market, what kind of cap rate. I used a 7 for this one, and cap rates recently have been going down. Well, maybe creeping back up again with interest rates going up or whatever. But um, cap rate, you could research a little bit more yourself if you want to understand that more. But this computes a bunch of different cap rates for you, and then you can research which one are my things selling at. Okay, I think 7 is a good cap rate for this type of property in that location, and then you put your 7% under this purchase cap and price section. So I'm looking at my cap rates, looking at the prices, maybe finagling some numbers up above. Okay, well, I'll go back to that, to finagling numbers. So I'm looking at my cap rates. I'm saying 7% is what I'm going to go with here. I put my 7% down here in the red spot, which will bring the purchase price down here. Then I have a spot to subtract anything that I know I want to take out of that purchase price. So, like I said, with a potential rent scenario where you have an office building, and right now it's way below market rents, but I am going to bring it up to higher rents, and I'm going to pay the higher rents price for the property, but I need to take out what I need to do to that. So this is where you would do that. So I have my price there, in this case $97,000, and then under here I said immediate repairs and renovations. We were there, we know this one deck was right on a roof. It needs decking, wood put on there so that people aren't walking out of the unit right onto the rubber roof. That was definitely bad. Plus, there was some rubber roof issues. There were a couple other things that need to be addressed right away. Maybe get the seller to do it on an offer or something. But for these purposes of these numbers, I put in 5 grand to fix what we thought needed to be fixed there. So I'm taking my price minus immediate things that need to be done to bring it up to this value I'm talking about. So it's worth 97,000, but it's only worth 97,000 after I do these things. So, and again, in a case of an office building that's vacant for 3 months while you renovate it, you're going to deduct those losses, those rent losses in here from your price. Or hopefully you can. You might not get away with it. Maybe you'll have to eat that because it's a seller's market or whatever. But again, conservatively, kind of put in everything you might have to pay, which will give you with the actual purchase price. And then that purchase price, like I said, or asking price, if you're doing an analysis for a listing, would be brought up here to that top number. And then it's also brought down to the section where it says financing and debt service. So under the financing and debt service, you have things like purchase price, the price per unit, which is a nice thing to know. Again, if you look at the market, and typically multi-units in my area, they're going for like 200 a unit, even for crappy units. Definitely over 100 a unit. I remember back in the day, you could get one for 50, 60, 70. But now, I mean, they're really expensive per unit. But just like knowing your per square foot averages and what those should be, and knowing when there's an anomaly or something way out of whack, this will compute your price per unit for you too. So you can look at that number and say, okay, does that look reasonable? Is that crazy? Blah, blah, blah. Your loan percentage, you put that in there. That doesn't is not used for a computation, so that doesn't have to be there, but I like to put it in there for informational and to tell what I ran these numbers on. So commercial loan, typically putting 20, 25% down. I like to be conservative again. Maybe you could find hard money with no money down or whatever. But again, I'm going to go kind of typical commercial loan, conservative, blah, 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 75% down. So again, it's going to tell me my down payment. And then up here under total cash needed, that's a little bit more because then that pulls in maybe transfer tax and 0.25% for miscellaneous kind of stuff or whatever, or 0.5% or whatever you want to make that computation. So your down payment on the loan is there. Your loan amount, interest rate you want to use for this computation. For these purposes, I used a 7. Term of years, commercial loans a lot of times are not 30 years. They're going to be 15, 20, especially if you're talking about big commercial projects. You'll get like a 10, 15, 20 maybe, and it won't be a fixed rate for the whole time. It'll be like a 5-year fixed with a balloon payment, or then it changes based on current consumer price index, CPI or something. But typically it's not as long of a term. Again, conservative. And for this here, I'm doing a 15-year loan. And again, you could change these numbers. If it's like, well, I'm getting no cash with a 15-year loan. Well, I think I could get a 20-year loan at this percent, blah, blah, blah. Well, that stretches it out longer. Now that gets me $100 cash flow every month. Now it makes sense. So if I can get it for this price and get a 20-year loan on it for 75, or maybe now it's 80% or whatever, then it would cash flow, then it makes sense. But for these purposes, I put 15. Then I just go to an amortization calculator wherever using these terms, and that will give me my monthly payment for that loan, which you have to input here, 624 in this case. Then times 12 gives me my yearly debt service. So you have your monthly debt service and your yearly debt service. And that's just the loan. That's not if you had like taxes and insurance rolled into your payment. Obviously, that is not in there. This is just principal and interest payments on a loan. And typically, with a commercial loan, you wouldn't have things escrowed like that. I suppose, possibly, maybe on something like this, but usually not. But that is a note. This is only just the loan principal and interest. So your debt service is that amount, and then your income after debt service, which is your cash flow. So we already took out every possible expense that there possibly could be to get all the money we're actually going to be getting in pocket, profit, so to speak. Then we have to take out of that profit. I still have to pay the bank for the loan. So these computations will take that out for you. And you can see here, after paying the loan with that operating income minus the loan payment, we're in the hole for $659, which again, if you're just looking for break even is fine, as long as all this other criteria is fine, then maybe that's okay. But $100 a door at least, $500 a door, more is better. But making some cash flow per door is nice. But this will calculate it for you. And let you know what it is. So again, on this computation here, a little bit in the hole, but possibly okay for some people. And then your return of investment down payment. So this, you're in the hole about 2% based on your total cash you put into it. Somebody's coming in. Total cash you put into it, and then accounting for all the other stuff. And again, simple cash on cash. It's not opportunity costs and future discounted rates and blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of simple cash from this. How much did I put into it? How much did I get back? I'm negative 2% per year, basically. And that could change because maybe your rents go up every year or whatever, but this is based on current, what's sitting in this form. And then again, the next page then shows you your appreciation amount every year. I think there was something I wanted to go back to. Does anybody have any questions on that page, on that stuff? Nope. All right, moving right along. This is going to be great for people watching the replays. They don't, or no, actually, questions are good to illustrate case studies maybe, but moving right along. So you remember, and this will be the last thing I talk about, you remember that I said this is kind of most conservative. Obviously they were asking 170 and I came up with a value of 92 grand. Obviously they're not going to take that for it. And that's probably unreasonable. It's clearly worth more than that all day long. You ask anybody on the street, any appraiser, without even running any numbers or running any comps, is that house sitting there worth more than 92,000? Yes, it's worth way closer to what they're asking for it probably. So obviously that's crazy. If we were really being anal and really, really, really drilling down the numbers and hiring somebody to rent it for us and at 20% commission and manage it for us and all these things, then it really is only worth $92,000 to us. But let's say, okay, well, that's crazy. And some of these things are kind of conservative numbers and don't really need to be in here for a property like this. I'm going to manage it myself. I'm going to do the commissions myself, yada, yada. Now you go back, maybe usually I would save this one as like the conservative or current situation or whatever you want to label it as. And then I would make a copy and call it potential or less conservative, liberal, whatever you want to call it. Another one where you're going to do the things that I'm about to do here. So if I was trying to make this look better, or if it's a listing and you're like, I can't send this to that person, they're going to tell me to pound sand and find another agent that'll do it on the 1% method, and probably get close to that price for it, possibly. So I can't send this to that person. I need to make this look better. So I would come in here and say, all right, well, the rents are what they are. I really can't change that. That has to be what it is. Vacancy and credit losses. Let's go half. One unit. Again, I think an appraiser is still going to do. Oh, my keyboard. There we go. Not 44%, 4%. So I could bring that number down a little bit, possibly reasonably, and still have something in there. I really hate taking it all out. You possibly could take it all out, but we could at least cut that in half maybe to make it a little bit more desirable since there's only 2 units and maybe only one turns over every year. Uh, Gross income is going to be what it is. Real estate taxes are what they are. Property insurance pretty much is what it is, unless you can maybe find a discounted rate or something, but that's probably is what it is. Management, that's a big number you can take out, and that is a big number, usually 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. If you're in the hood and it's a really terrible place to manage, you might be paying on that upper end. So that's a big number that can come out, especially with a 2 unit. And this is the only unit I'm going to own right now. And even I could even handle 5 units and manage them myself, or at least you think you can right now. Um, let's take that out because this is a small 2 unit. The person, whoever owns this, is probably going to manage it themselves, not that management intensive. So I'm going to put 0 in for management. I'm not paying for that. Then commissions, again, I can do that myself. I can put it on Craigslist, on Facebook. Not hard to find tenants. It's only a 2 unit. Maybe I only own 8 total units in my portfolio, and I can do this myself or whatever. So I'm going to take that out and put 0 for commissions. So now we took out 2 big chunks, accounting and legal. So I'm basically looking at every one of these numbers and seeing where I could trim them down within reason, obviously. Accounting and legal, like I said, if it's $1,000, $100 of that maybe is for doing stuff for this property. So I'm going to take that down to 100. Electric, blah, 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 all that stuff is 0. Licenses and permits. All right, I put 150 in here. Maybe now I actually called the township and I know it's actually only $75 per year to renew your permit for your rental units or whatever. Or maybe it's $35 per unit. Let's put $70. Supplies, all right, I really don't need much. Maybe some paper towels. Once I buy the broom and the mop for the basement or whatever, that's only a one time. I don't need to buy anything else really. Ant traps really are really cheap, blah, blah, blah. So let's bring that down to half of it. That's not a big number, not going to have a huge impact anyway, but every dollar does make a difference. So supplies, I'm going to take that down to $100. Pest control, tenant paid, like I said, tenant paid. Repairs and maintenance. I really hate to take that one off. I'm going to leave that one in because these are older units and you really, I don't know if you can do that. But for sake of this, to make it look better, I'm going to cut it in half, maybe. Let's say 250. I hate taking that out and don't want to, but for sake of this, we'll put that at 250. Reserves for replacements. I'm just not going to do that. I don't want that in my numbers or whatever. Again, one I hate taking out. You really should be doing this. Even homeowners should be doing this. And that's a big thing when you buy a condo. People don't realize is part of that condo payment is, and here at least, sometimes it's your sewer, your trash, your lawn mowing, your roof. They're saving for a new roof for you, assuming they're doing it correctly with their budgets and everything. But if you're a single family homeowner, nobody's putting away some amount into a special fund for a roof. Some are, but most aren't. But for commercial properties, you want to put that in there mostly because a lot of times an appraiser is going to put that in there anyway, whether you want to or not. So reserves for replacements, I have it at 2%. Maybe for sake of this, we'll take it down to 1% or whatever, just to take something out for that. There are no others or total expenses. So you can see our net operating income just by doing that went from 6 grand up to 15 grand. And again, I had 20% income for commissions and management fees. So 30% was coming out of that, which was a lot right there. But if you come down, we added a lot to the net operating income. So now we're starting to look a lot more reasonable. You can see that our purchase price up here has now come to 211,000, which again is way high, and this is kind of on the liberal side, like I said. But we're up more at an operating income of 15,000. Then I would say, all right, and maybe stuff is selling at a 9% cap rate, which feels more right to me. I'd asked a couple people and they said a 7. 9 feels better for whatever reason in my head for this property, but you can see where 9 would be right at what they're asking for it. So if I wanted to make it look like or agree with them that it was worth what they were asking, I'm going to choose that 9% cap rate, which is probably still reasonable for this in this market. You could argue that probably. Now we're at exactly what they're asking for it. For the most part, I'm still going to take out $5,000 for immediate repairs, which is probably a little bit on the high side for what needs done, but still going to put that in there because again, I represent the buyer in this case. So 5 grand. So our asking or our offer price is going to be 163 or in the 160 to 165 range, or maybe we think it's worth, all right, 160, this is worth it to me. So if I bought it at a 160, now you can see down here, I'm going to have to recalculate the amortization. So what's the down payment? Down payment is 47, 7, no, I need the loan amount. 122, 318, 122, 318, 122. Finally, 122, 318 for 15 years at again 7%. Calculate, I'm at 1,099.43. So I come over here, 1,099.43 for my monthly payment. Takes me to that yearly debt service. And I'm cash flowing $2,000 a month, or no, $161 a month, sorry, cash flowing 2 grand a year. So per door, a lot of times you'll hear on Bigger Pockets or somewhere, I'm trying to get $100 per door. That's reasonable. Don't need to make a killing as long as it's appreciating, paying for itself, getting help on my taxes, blah, blah, blah. So this, at that price, the 163, based on 75% down on the loan at a 7% interest rate, would get you in a reasonable cash flow position probably, as long as you are managing it yourself. You are not hiring a real estate agent or paying commissions to rent it, assuming you only have 1 month of vacancy total, assuming you don't have to replace more than $250 worth of stuff every year, assuming all those numbers we put up atop end up to be true, you are cash flowing and it could be worth it. So I think I ended up telling this person that at 160-ish, I think it would possibly be worth it as long as they were okay with managing it and all those numbers being what they are. And I thought the 9% cap rate was reasonable also. So every monthly you have your cash flow, which now you can see is a little bit more reasonable. Your return now, instead of being negative 2 point whatever percent first year or per year, you're up at 4+% return on cash out. And then your appreciation every year is also calculated down here for you. That is slightly more as well, assuming it appreciates every year at whatever there. And you can see in my appreciation rate here, I put more of an average, long-term average in my area. We're anywhere from 1.5 to maybe 3 or so typically. In the good areas, lately it's 7, 40, crazy percents. So I usually typically put a more conservative appreciation rate in there so that over time it will be more right. But you could play with it and say, well, what if it was 7% per year? And it'll show you what you're making on the property just with appreciation every year, assuming things go up that much per year anyway. But again, I usually use a conservative kind of long term appreciation rate down there so it's more realistic. And that is how I would analyze a property. I think that's the end. Any questions or anything? I know it's a lot, and until you actually start doing it and putting these numbers and playing with it a couple times, it won't make much sense. But after you do it a couple times, and it's not rocket science, you're taking how much you can make from it, taking away how much you got to pay to run it, and then coming up with the purchase price and seeing how much cash flow you're going to have from it. Peace out, everybody.